Hi, good evening. Welcome to our non-live APPE Foundation Philosophy of Education session. This is Thursday, the 27th of April, and tonight we're going to start looking at normative philosophy, and in particular, we're going to look at two teacher-centered philosophies. The one is essentialism, and the other one perennialism. Just before we go into the two teacher-centered philosophies, later on next week Thursday, we're going to look at two student-centered ones of progressivism and social constructionism. There are many more normative philosophies than just the four that we're going to be looking at, but these are the four that fit in the best with education. So just a little bit of general um, information or elements around what normative philosophies actually are. They mostly focus on ethics, moral philosophy, and political philosophy. That's their primary focus. And so um, their focus is really on what is right, what is wrong, what ought to be, what are the values, what principles should guide human behavior. That's typically the kind of questions or thinking processing that is used to develop the normative theories. Also, these normative philosophies employ a systematic and analytical approach, relying quite heavily on logical reasoning, um, analyzing concepts. Um, yeah, it's more objective and analytical. The contextually speaking, normative philosophies seek to develop universal principles that can be applied to all individuals and all societies. It's more of a universal kind of, regardless of the cultural or the historical context. Um, as I said, they rely on logical, systematic processing using principles, rules, deductive and inductive reasoning. A lot of focus on language and something else I wanted to say about normative philosophies. They tend to draw on more of the classic philosophies and traditions. Uh, I've been very influenced by sort of ancient Greek philosophies. I think, yeah, that's sort of a bit of a general introduction to what the normative philosophies are as a group. If we now take a look at essentialism, as I said, we're going to be doing two teacher-centered ones, essentialism and perennialism. If we look at the origin and the development of essentialism, as I've mentioned, both of these philosophies date back to ancient Greece, and they were discovered and kind of formulated by Plato. The belief is that people and things have natural and essential characteristics, and that these essences or characteristics are eternal and unchanging, and that the true knowledge about an object or a concept or a person can only be obtained by understanding its essence, these core, unchanging characteristics. In the medieval period, Islamic philosophers uh, sort of um, continue to evolve this concept of core essence, and for them, everything has a unique essence, and that this essence is the cause of the object's existence and property. Christian theologians during this same period believed that objects have a fixed essence, but that this essence was given by God. Then, in the modern era, essentialism has been modified more for the advancement of education, and the idea or the purpose was to reform education to a rationality-based system. So a system that was more based on reason, arriving at logic, arriving at conclusions logically, justifying conclusions, basically purely objective. If we have a look at the epistemology and the metaphysics of essentialism, we see that they believe knowledge is gained by discovering and understanding these essential characteristics of an object or a concept, and that this can only be achieved through observing and empirical investigation and using reason and logic. Only then can we understand essential characteristics of a concept and then gain knowledge through that. The essential properties of an object are intrinsic, and you cannot separate these essential properties from the object. And if you do, you're basically changing the fundamental nature of that object. Essentialism believe that species have fixed and immutable characteristics that in holistically define their identity, and that these essential characteristics are then passed down from one generation to the next. And as I said, these characteristics are unchanging, and they ultimately determine the object or the species' behavior, personality. I think that's pretty much epistemology and metaphysics of essentialism. If we look at essentialism in education, we see that they emphasize the biggest key element really is that they emphasize the importance of a core body of knowledge and skills that, irrespective of the subject that the student is doing, they should all learn. So irrespective of the discipline or the course that a student is engaging in, there is this core body of knowledge that they all need to learn, and that this core body of knowledge can only be transmitted from the teacher to the student. The teacher is the expert, and then kind of instructs the student as to what they should know. There's a huge emphasis in the essentialist classroom on discipline, academic achievement, and mastering basic skills. For them, the purpose really of education is to teach this core knowledge, and for them that is all that they need in order to succeed in society. So basically then three things for them that is essentially that they focus on in education is the sound academic knowledge. There's quite a bit of focus on patriotism and on character development. I think the subjects that are really important for them are your basic subjects: literacy, numeracy, writing, sciences, and as I said, teachers have to be the expert. If you really think about educational systems worldwide, you would have to realize that many of them are still functioning within the essentialist kind of paradigm, which is not necessarily wrong or bad or detrimental. However, in my personal opinion, they cannot stay there. They cannot operate in that paradigm in its entirety, as the entire system, education system. But I think it does have some form of a place, very small place. Obviously, the critique of essentialism, and I don't even think I have to specifically mention. I'm sure you've already, as you've been listening to it already, thought of all the negatives. But the biggest critique really against essentialism in education is that it's just too rigid, inflexible. It oversimplifies complex things. There's too much emphasis on memorization, rote learning, academic achievement, and it doesn't really meet with or prepare students really for the 21st century. It doesn't prepare students for change and being adaptable and flexible. Curriculum content is still Western dominant, and I think with our diverse classrooms, multicultural classrooms, I don't think there's enough focus on the varied experiences of our different students. So, I mean, as I said, I think there's a certain element of necessity in having a bit of focus on essentialism, but I think that has to play a minor role in education. Okay, if we then move on to perennialism, and if we look at the origin and the development of perennialism, also ancient Greece, works of Plato, who argued that there are objective and eternal truths that are completely independent of human experience, and they can be explained through reason. And then in the modern era, perennialism was further developed to emphasize the importance of spiritual and moral values. And there's this belief that all religions can be united under a core sort of spiritual knowledge, and that intelligence is not enough, that we also need to have a relationship with a higher spiritual being. I think one of the key ideas in perennialism is that, yeah, as I said, this common core of spiritual values is shared by all religions, despite obvious differences, I suppose. And this core consists of, or is made up of principles of compassion, love, truth, beauty. And then further in the 21st century, it also had more influence in the field of education. And I think the biggest thing really about perennialism in education is the focus on the classics. So the students would be doing a lot of Shakespeare and philosophy of Plato, Aristotle, what are the great thinkers in history, that kind of focus. So, which kind of then leads me to, okay, but before we discuss the education and let's have a look at the epistemology and the metaphysics of perennialism. As I said earlier, human beings can only attain knowledge of ultimate reality through some sort of spiritual connection, transcendence. Activities that they focus on are things like meditation and prayer, contemplation, emphasizing again that there are core truths that underline all religions. And these core truths, also known as objective reality, exists independent of any human interpretation or human experience. This objective reality is timeless. It was there, it is there, and it will always be there. It transcends cultural differences, historical differences, even language and conceptualization differences. And you can only really experience or realize this object reality through spiritual insight. So that is the epistemology and metaphysics of perennialism. If we look at perennialism in education, the first and foremost thing is they advocate lifelong learning, lifelong discovery, aiming to cultivate the whole person with intellectual as well as spiritual development. And as I mentioned previously, a lot of focus on the classic works, such as Plato, Aristotle, Shakespeare, other great thinkers in history. The purpose really for that is to move students from the here and the now to appreciate and to learn from the classics. Again, I don't think we could focus entirely on perennialism in our education system, but again, I do think it has a place. I do think that our students, this generation, have lost out because there's not that much focus anymore. Well, there wasn't much in my generation, but now even less focus on the great thinkers and the good old classics. I don't think, when children are forced to read some of the classic works, literature at school, I just don't think they enjoy it, but I think it's because it's not presented in in an enjoyable fashion. But the perennialist, yeah, so for them it was developing the intellectual as well as the moral capacities of their students. And they can only do this if they get their students to study ideas and truths and principles that have stood the test of time. The subjects are mostly humanities, which is literature, history, philosophy, and arts. And even in other modules or subjects or courses, they would um, sort of like um, advocate to follow a central theme or idea, such as justice, beauty, love, or truth, but then to kind of organize the entire course around that theme. Also, very popular within the perennialist education kind of like system or setup. The lecturer, the teacher would use the Socratic method quite a lot because the whole idea is to uncover beliefs, to question them, and then to challenge assumptions and beliefs. So that is perennialism and essentialism for now. Then just a reminder of your ICE Task 3, which is due on the 15th of May. I will be uploading ICE Task 4 next week, Thursday, the 4th of May, when we do our live collab. I will go just talking through with you. So this ICE Task 3 is really just comparing the normative philosophies, teacher versus student-centered. So yeah, it's not too complex. I've tried to keep the ICE tasks short so that you don't have to spend too much time on them, but that you are in a way still engaging with the content. Okay, I really do not enjoy talking to myself, but this is now another recording that's done. I shall upload this onto the YouTube channel, and I look forward to having a live engagement with you all again next week, Thursday. Have a good evening further.